Good morning. Good morning. It's Charmaine Hammond, and we're here today. We're here today for our webinar talking about corporate sponsorship. Most of you know me because you met me at the eWomen Network networking event in Toronto, and a big thank you, Daniela, for such an amazing event. Wow. Really lovely to meet you all. And we were talking at that event about corporate sponsorship and how entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, event hosts can work in a much bigger way to find corporate sponsors to fund their dreams, their business activities, their tours, their product launches, and more. I promised you at that meeting we would get on a webinar together to do a deeper dive to talk about how to prepare for the discovery call. Now, the discovery call, just so that you all understand what the discovery call is, that's the first point of contact that you'll have with a sponsor. And the person that you're talking to is likely, if it's a local business, it's going to be the business owner, unless they're big enough to have a marketing coordinator or a marketing director. If you're dealing with a bigger business that has multiple locations, such as a bank or an insurance company, they probably have a marketing director that you're going to be dealing with, or a sponsorship director. Now, here's the interesting thing about sponsorship. It's tough to navigate. It's interesting to navigate, but I think I've unlocked some of the keys to be able to navigate through sponsorship a little easier. One of the challenges, one of the things that we bump up against is getting to the right person. If you go on to sponsor websites, so I encourage you to do that after today's webinar, to actually go on to some different sponsor websites. Go check out your bank, your insurance company, maybe the credit card that you deal with, maybe the vehicle that you have. Go and check out their website. And what I want you to do is search the term sponsorship. Now, in some cases, you will not come up with the word sponsorship on a website because they call it something different. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about 3 critical things. Number 1 is, how do you prepare? What do you need to do to prepare to pick up the phone and call a corporate sponsor, or to connect with someone that you know already? Number 2 is the research that needs to happen so that you can have the best call ever. And the third that we're going to talk about is actually doing the discovery call. These are all part of the process in sponsorship. We have a chat box that you can put your questions into. The chat box on the right-hand side of your screen is probably where you see that. And I'll be looking at the questions. And I will also get back to folks. If you have a question that I can't answer today or we run out of time, I will send that out in a follow-up email. So again, I'm Charmaine Hammond. Let's dive in. Sponsorship, as you'll remember, is a marketing relationship. Sponsorship is not a case where somebody writes you a big fat check and says, go do what you want with it, and we don't want to hear from you again. That's more like a donor relationship in a nonprofit organization. That's not what we're dealing with in business, and not what we're talking about today. We're speaking about the transaction, the relationship between a company and you, a business and you. In the world of sponsorship, they call them the brand, and they call us the property. So the property is the person, entrepreneur, speaker, author, coach, that's applying for sponsorship from a brand, the company. So those terms are important. And again, I'm going to repeat it. Sponsorship is a marketing relationship. You see, the sponsor, by supporting you, your event, your product launch, whatever it is that you're doing, the sponsor wants to ensure that he or she gets something in return, because they invest a lot of time and money in the sponsorship process. Let me give you an example. I was speaking at the Western Sponsorship Congress in Calgary last year, and it's a fabulous event. It's hosted by the Partnership Group, and they were one of my mentors in learning about sponsorship many years ago. And the Partnership Group actually brings together a variety of different sponsors. They had people from Dell, Staples, insurance companies, oil and gas, utilities, municipalities, big brands like IBM and West Ed Mall, big businesses. And they had about 30 sponsors that they were showcasing throughout the event. And my favorite part of the event was where they do what's called the pitch. They actually have some nonprofits or entrepreneurs making a pitch, just like Dragon's Den on TV. They're making a pitch. Now, it is for pretend money, but what was so interesting is that many times the sponsor said, if this were real money, we would have sponsored you. And I'm sure there were some transactions that happened after. Now, part of what made the businesses and the entrepreneurs so successful in their pitch is that they really understood sponsorship, what we're talking about today. The fact that it's a marketing relationship, that the sponsor is wanting to get something in return, that we recognize how much money it costs them to activate the sponsorship. And I'll talk about that in a moment. The second piece that I loved about this pitch was watching what people brought up, what people said as they were pitching a sponsor to make it appealing to that sponsor, the type of questions that they asked, and even the type of research that they did. Now, I want to go back to the piece about it costs sponsors money to give us money, and that's called activation. The process of when the sponsor has approved an agreement with you and they're going to sponsor you in some way, either in kind, which is providing you with services and products in kind. So there isn't maybe a financial transaction, or it could be a cash sponsorship where they're writing you a check for a certain set of activities, or it could be a combination of both. Regardless of what type of sponsorship it is, there's a big cost to the company. Behind the scenes, what they're doing in activation is they're updating all of the people that need to know about this. In the case of the sponsored RV, the motorhome that we had from Fraser Way RV on our kindness tour, there was a lot of work behind the scenes that the people we were dealing with had to get handled. They had to make sure that the marketing team knew about it, the media team, the graphic design team. All of this is happening behind the scenes. One of the things I learned at the sponsorship conference that I mentioned was that one of the pet peeves for brands, for big companies, is that we ask for too little. Let's say that again. We ask for too little. Now, which means we go to a sponsor with not a big enough ask. And where the concern for them comes, and this is their words, not mine, is that it costs them so much money to put the sponsorship into play. They have to bring on so many people in their organization. And so if you've just asked them for $5,000, it might cost them $10,000 to give you $5,000. So we need to make sure that we really understand from a sponsor's perspective what kind of availability of funds is present for specific opportunities. So the three things we're talking about now is how to prepare, what kind of research to do, and then getting ready for discovery calls. Preparing is critical. At the time that we met at Toronto, I gave you some homework. I hope that you did it. One of the pieces of homework was to create the list of everyone you know and do business with. This could be your hairdresser, your eye doctor, your gym coach or fitness coach. It could be where you get your nails done, where you buy your clothes, your insurance company, your bank, your telecom company. Think about where you spend money every month. And if you think about it, you're actually in a relationship with these people, a transactional financial relationship with these people. These are great places to start because they already know you. And if you don't have a strong relationship with them, you're still in a relationship with them. It's not like you bank at CIBC and that's who you have a relationship with, but then you're going to TD Bank to apply for sponsorship where there's no relationship. If you're going to CIBC, you've been dealing with them. You deal with the bankers, you deal online with people. The second piece of homework that I challenged you to do was to create that list of what you need. For event hosts, I know some of you on the call are planning your own events, or that's what you do, you're an event host. What do you need to make those events successful? In terms of marketing, venue, the decor, the AV, the photography, the videography, the marketing, the graphic design, the printed material, such as banners, pamphlets, postcards. So whatever it is that you're seeking sponsorship for, you're going to write a list of everything you need. So while we've got some of you with us today, why don't we have you write in the chat box, what are some of the things that you would need? And it doesn't have to be specific to an event. For us, it was our tour, our Million Acts of Kindness tour. We needed technology. We needed internet access. We needed a vehicle. We needed a branded vehicle, actually, with the wrap on the RV. We needed marketing materials, media, and the list went on and on. So if you can write down in the chat box, what are some of the things that you need for a project that you're looking at finding sponsors for? And I'll come back to that in just a moment. The third list that I challenged you to do is, what do you have to offer? Now, this is important. So, hi, Tammy. Great to see you here. So, Tammy says website and marketing material. Gail is saying event location for 80 people, so somewhere to hold the event. Printing, absolutely. Printing. Thanks, Charmaine. It's so great being on a webinar with another Charmaine, by the way. I keep looking at it thinking, did I just type that? Printing, AV, and venue costs, rental, food and beverage. These are all things that you want to do. And every time that you have a project, whether it's an event, a launch, a tour, product creation, if you're creating a product, every time that you're doing a project, you want to actually go through the very same process. Your list of who you know and do business with is probably something you can just update, but this list of what you need is going to be written every time you have an event. Tammy's talking video. Yeah, Tammy, you hold these great events in terms of leadership. So I can imagine that you've got all kinds of needs for events, which means, the good news, all kinds of opportunities for sponsors to get involved. Decor, that's a great thing. A lot of us don't think of that, and that really adds up. Marketing material, says Gail. Thanks, Gail. Product creation for speech prep. Actually, Gail, I'm really glad you brought that up, because sometimes what we miss on the what we need list is the services that we need. Maybe it's a speaking coach, somebody to help you craft your message. Maybe it's a media coach. Perhaps with your product launch or your event, you're going to be doing lots of media and you need some media coaching. That might be an opportunity for a sponsorship. Gail says makeup, absolutely. Makeup, hair, all of that. I was actually speaking at an event not too long ago where they had a makeup artist and a hairstylist on site. It was amazing. We all looked gorgeous for the pictures. And that was a sponsor. That particular event host had the hair and makeup. And they told everyone to bring 2 changes of clothes. And that stylist expert also just helped us decide which outfit to wear on stage. And it was a sponsorship. It was an in-kind sponsorship. Now, we've got our list of who we know and do business with. We have our list of what we need, and you've just identified a whole bunch of needs. And of course, you do this on a case-by-case basis. You're going to type it up. Keep these files. You can use these over and over and over again. And then the third piece that you might need is what you have to offer. So let's talk about this list for a while. This is all part of the preparation, what you have to offer. Now, I'm just going to talk about you for a minute, Tammy, because I know quite a bit about your events. I've had friends and colleagues who have presented at your events, and they're extremely well run. I've heard nothing but good. Now, Tammy and her team have really high expectations around the professionalism and the branding of their events. I've seen the advertising that you do, Tammy, and it's consistent, it's professional, and it's branded. And this is so important because sponsors look at this. They look at what we've done in past. While we're researching them and preparing and doing all of these lists, as soon as we start to look at researching them and getting a meeting set up with them, they actually start researching us. So with Tammy, they would go on Tammy's LinkedIn and her Facebook event pages and check out the events and really start to get a handle on these events, and even before the call that Tammy would have with this potential sponsor. Now, part of this whole concept of identifying what you have to offer, Tammy and her team who have events have multiple offerings for sponsors. So Tammy, I'm going to get you to type in the chat box if some ideas come up for you. What are some of the benefits that you have offered sponsors? I know certainly logo placement, because I've seen your event marketing. So your event marketing highlight sponsors on web pages, social media, graphics, signage. What else can you think of that would be a benefit for an event? So I'll get Tammy to put her comments in, but for all of you, if you're hosting events, what could be a benefit for a sponsor? And I'll share some of the ones that we've had. So Tammy says, speaking in front of delegates. Bingo. This is probably a benefit for sponsors. I know for me as a speaker, if I'm going to sponsor an event, having my logo on things is really great because my logo is my name. But if my logo was a picture, like the Nike swoosh, unless people knew my picture, my graphic, they wouldn't even know who I am. So logo placement can be powerful when when the logo describes the company name. But speaking on a stage to the delegate, if I was a sponsor at Tammy's event and I'm a speaker, even if I'm not a speaker, getting in front of every single delegate on the stage, beautiful, beautiful benefit as a sponsor. Logo placement. Oh, exhibitor booth. Thanks for raising that, Tammy. A lot of that is a benefit. A lot of sponsors, what they value is the relationship that they can build at an event with the delegates. So a logo doesn't build a relationship. A logo gives them brand awareness and recognition. Getting in front of delegates, whether it's through a booth or on the stage, allows them to build meaningful relationships with the audience. So for any of you that are hosting events, it doesn't matter if it's 10 people in a yoga studio and it's an event, or a big event like Tammy's. Think about all of the benefits that would be important to a sponsor and write these down. Now here's the key. You don't want to be so locked into these benefits that you're not open to hearing from sponsors what they see as a benefit. When you get on the discovery call, which the third piece we're talking about today, we'll talk about how to ask those questions. Ultimately, we want to have a list of all the things that we think could be a benefit to the sponsor. And then we're going to ask the sponsor later on the call, what would be a benefit to you? What type of recognition would you find most valuable? What is important to you about sponsoring these events? We want to find that out so that we can absolutely deliver the benefits that are going to be most meaningful to them. At events, I'm just going to talk about events. One benefit to some sponsors is what we call sampling. If you have a food product, if you have a, I'll use the example of our poop bag sponsor, the original poop bags. The best way for Paul to market his product is not by logo placement. People don't go usually buy a new set of poop bags because of the logo. They go and buy it because of either word of mouth or they've tried it and they like them. So Paul and his team provided us with many, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of poop bags that we would give out at the events that they were sponsoring, because they knew that sampling was the most important benefit for them as a sponsor. Tammy says, always open to customizing benefits. That's really important, Tammy, and I'm glad you brought that up, because if we don't customize, we break cardinal rule number 1. Everyone write this down and never make this mistake. Sponsors do not like gold, silver, bronze. We do it all the time, but they don't like it. In fact, at the sponsorship conference I was talking to you about, the majority of the sponsors, when they were asked, what is the number one thing that drives you crazy around sponsorship? They all said gold, silver, and bronze. And it doesn't matter if you called it platinum, friends, it doesn't matter what you call it. When we have these preset levels, which is basically for gold, $10,000, you'll get all these benefits. The problem is what if all those benefits don't help the sponsor? They're going to say no. So the customization and creating something unique for every sponsor is going to get you a lot more yeses. So as Tammy says, always open to customizing. The objectives for them are really super important. All right, so that's the preparation, the list of who you know, the list of what you need, the list of what you can offer, the benefits. Some other benefits, I just want to give you a few more besides logo placement, speaking on the stage, offering to do a draw, where the sponsor could host a draw by collecting business cards, and that would give them connections to the people in the audience. It could be sponsoring a lunch or a coffee break. Could be sponsoring the selfie booth. These are things that you can offer to them as a benefit. But you also have your own list of benefits, access to social media. So you can talk to sponsors about your social media reach or your media connections, doing a press release and mentioning them there, about doing a webinar or a video with them and placing the video on the website, having them create their own video that goes on the website and bigs up your event. It could be mentioning them in email newsletters or doing a dedicated mailing for them. These are all the things that you want to be super creative about, because then when you talk to the sponsor, you can rattle some of these off and say, do these feel of benefit to you? Do these feel useful? Number 2 is, so we've talked about preparing. Number 2 is to research your sponsors. Now, I think that this or that researching your sponsors is actually something that a lot of people forget and they miss out on. They sort of create the first set of lists and then they pick up the phone and start phoning. If you don't research your sponsors, you're actually going to waste a lot of time, because some sponsors are just not that into us. Just like the movie, he's just not into you. What I mean by that is that there's certain sponsors that only sponsor certain types of projects. CIBC Bank is a great example. They're my bank. They sponsor breast cancer events. They do the CIBC Walk for breast cancer. They support breast cancer awareness throughout the year. They do sponsor other things, but that is their number one investment in terms of in sponsorship. Let's take Canadian Tire in Canada here. Canadian Tire loves to provide kids with the opportunities to play sports. They support giving sporting goods and sporting materials and equipment to nonprofit organizations. So they probably wouldn't fund something related to a women's holistic health event, because it might not be a fit. It's not where their priorities are. We really want to research them. And here's what you do. Here's what I've done, is you go on to the sponsor's website and you just take a casual look around. Notice the words that they say a lot. So one example was an oil company here in Canada. One of the most common phrases that I saw on their website is, we support projects where our employees live and work. That was nearly on every page. The reason I wrote that down in my notes was that I was going to make sure when I got on the discovery call with that sponsor, I was going to somehow weave that in to the conversation. You'll get to know what the sponsor's values are, what's important to them, just by the way their website copy is written. So you're first of all going to just peruse the website, notice what you notice, take note and mark down any phrases or words or values that they repeat a lot. The second part of this now, the website review for your sponsor, is that you're going to go and follow them on social media. Now be aware, the person who makes sponsorship decisions for Staples Canada is not the person doing social media, right? But with a small business, a coffee shop down the street from you, it's really likely that the person doing the social media is also the person that owns the company that would also be making sponsorship decisions. So it's just important to know that the decision maker may or may not be the person that's doing social media, but you want to follow all the platforms that they're on that you use. So if you use LinkedIn, go follow their company page, their Facebook page, their Twitter. Those are usually the ones we see a lot of, sometimes YouTube. And the reason that you're following them is not to start stalking them or to start promoting your project. It's simply to follow them, to learn about them, and to become a champion for them. If, for example, you saw on their Facebook page that they had just supported or funded, sponsored some community event that was really successful, and you saw some pictures they posted on there, you could just do something like go onto that Facebook post and say, way to go, CIBC Bank, thanks for making such a difference in our community. And you don't tag your page or do anything weird like that that makes it look like a promotion. You just become a champion for them. This is what Teresa de Grosbois talks about as building mass influence. We have to give influence to be able to receive influence from other people. Now, after you have followed them on social media and you've kind of done a general peruse of their website, we want to start getting into a little bit more detail now. This is where you're going to search the term on their website, sponsorship. And don't be surprised if nothing comes up where it says no results found, because a lot of businesses don't use the word sponsorship for sponsorship. Here's the words that you'll want to write down. They might call it community investment, community relations. They might call it corporate responsibility, social responsibility. They might call it doing business in the community, supporting our community, community foundation. These are all words that they may call their sponsorship, and those are the pages that you're going to go and look for the sponsorship. So for companies that actually explain what their sponsorship model is, they usually will tell you the types of interests they have in sponsorship and who's not eligible. So they might say, an example is, our sponsorship program does not cover political campaigns. So that's probably not why you're going to them, but that would be if a person was, they're not going to get sponsorship. It might also say that sponsorship does not cover individuals. You or I just applying as a person for money. It's usually for a nonprofit or a business like you and I. So how we connect with them and how we talk about ourselves to a sponsor becomes important, because if we were just using the words I and we in the conversation, they might think that they're funding an individual instead of your company or your project. So we want to use words like at Hammond International, my company, my team and I, those kind of words when we get on a phone call. So it's really clear for them that they would be supporting a business project, not you as a person. They'll also usually put up their examples of past sponsorship, and this is what you really want to read. Take a look at what they have sponsored in the past. They'll often have press releases up there about past and current projects. They'll have pictures or videos. Those are things that you really want to look at for a couple of reasons. They might not feel like a fit to you. As you're watching the video, you might just be thinking, wow, energetically, this just doesn't feel like a fit. It just isn't who I am. And then you might not want to go any further with that sponsor. If it doesn't feel like a fit, if your values are not aligned, definitely don't pursue it. Because sponsorship, remember, is a marketing relationship. So it's not just about the money or the support, because you have to support them through the whole relationship of the sponsorship. So if your values aren't aligned, it's going to feel clunky and incongruent. And then it ends badly. And we don't want that. All right, the next piece about this research on their website is that they might also have an investor report or an annual report. This is where they'll also often talk about the ways in which their particular company has supported community projects. So they'll mention community projects and sponsorship. So take a read of those. I suggest creating an Excel spreadsheet that has the sponsor name, the website. If you can see a contact person on the website for sponsorship or community investment, whatever they are calling it, mark that in your in your spreadsheet, whether they give you an email, a contact page, a phone number, a name, because one of the toughest things is getting to the right person. Getting to the right person is tough. So the more you can do in your research, the faster you'll be able to get on a conversation with a sponsor. And then on that spreadsheet, take note of any of the value words that they've used again, like community engagement, or we want to build a green community. If they kept mentioning a green community or we support green projects, you know, the environment is really important to them. Make note of that, because you want to make sure that your program could deliver. So if we have events, for example, and you've got a sponsor who's all about the environment, and your event is going to give everybody tons of handouts, you're going to be using water bottles instead of water in a glass, and you're going to be using plastic cups or non-recyclable coffee cups. You might have a sponsor who shows up your event, and what you have done feels really out of alignment for them, which could affect their brand in a very, very devastating way. So you've got to think about all these, and this is why you do the research, so that you can make sure that this is going to feel like a good marriage. It's not going to end in a weird divorce, because really it is a relationship. So we've done the preparation, we've done all those lists. We've researched our sponsors. We follow them on social media. We've read the reports. We're getting an idea of who this sponsor is and what they value. Now we get ready to do the sponsor discovery calls. The discovery call is the point of contact that you have with the sponsor. Now, if you go back to your list, the who I do business with, which is who you should be contacting first, everybody on that list, your insurance company, your hairstylist, the coffee shop you go to, all of those places are the ones that if there's a fit for them with what you're looking for sponsorship for, that's who you call first. They're the easiest yeses because you're already in a relationship. If you're calling up Dell or some kind of product you wanted to bring into your project as a sponsor and you've never met them before, you just use their product, you don't really have a relationship with them. And big brands are telling me that on average, it takes 9 months to a year minimum to build a relationship with that company to the point that you might actually be in sponsorship conversations. 9 months to a year minimum. We talked about that one pet peeve that sponsors talked about the gold, silver, and bronze. The second pet peeve was that we ask for too little money. We don't ask for enough, and it costs them too much to implement the sponsorship, so they just say no. The third pet peeve around sponsorship is that we don't give them enough time. So a person goes to a sponsor and their event is in 6 weeks, and they're asking for money or in-kind support. And the dollars are already spent. For companies, they work on a year-out basis. So if you were to go to, say, Staples Canada for sponsorship, they've in 2016, we're already into October. They've long spent 2016 money, and they've probably already allocated and have started spending 2017. So really important to give them enough time. And the discovery calls are really that point of contact where you're going to pick up the phone and talk to the sponsor. Here are some questions that can help you. And you're probably only going to have 15 minutes. So your cell phone, the timer on your cell phone becomes really important. You actually want to set your cell phone for 13 minutes so that you're showing respect for the process and respect for their time. Now, when you find that person to contact in sponsorship, you're probably going to get a voicemail. So you're going to write a script on how you're going to leave a voicemail so it sounds fluid, it doesn't feel clunky. Mine sounds something like this. Hi, it's Charmaine Hammond with Hammond International. 780-405-7463. I'm looking to speak with you to better understand your sponsorship program. I've got a few questions for you. I wonder if we could set up a short call later this week or next, whatever works for you. Charmaine Hammond, 780-405-7463. Thanks, Bob. Have a great day. That's the message. I've said it lots of times. That's why it rolls off my tongue. Notice I left the number twice. And notice I left the number slow. Sponsors tell me that they get people who sound like this. Hi, my name is Sue, 780-405-7463. They try and write it down twice. They listen to your message twice. If they don't get it right and they get the wrong phone number, they're not phoning you back. It's just that simple. They're not going to work that hard to find your number. So leave your message slow. Leave your message slow, and you'll be able to listen to the video replay to write the script down from what I've just said. You can replay the video. It'll come to you in a couple of hours, and then you can actually write down what I've said and modify it for you. Let's say they do pick up the phone. That's where you say, hi, it's Charmaine Hammond with Hammond International. Bob, I was wanting to know a little bit more about your sponsorship program and how this works for CIBC. I'm wondering if you have 10 or 15 minutes now, or should we set another appointment? And he might say, you know what, I'm good for about 10 minutes. And I then go adjust my timer to 8 minutes because I want to respect his time. And then here's some of the questions that you can ask them. And you can listen to the video recording and write them down yourself. Tell me a little bit about your sponsorship program. And what I usually do is start off by prefacing, wow, Bob, I saw on your website and on your social media that your company has really gotten behind a lot of projects to do with kids and recreation and supporting healthy development for children as leaders. I'd love to know a little bit more about that and why that's a priority for your company. So he might say something like, in 2016, our priority was actually kids and leadership. In 2018, our priority is changing. We're going to be dealing with a different priority, and it's going to be this. And then he'll tell you what it is. So you're going to take active notes, point form notes as he's talking, because this is critical data. And then you might ask him a question about, and these are just all questions that are not in order right now. I'm just giving you the questions that, because your question is going to piggyback on the answer he just gave. If you have a list of 10 questions and you just go by the order, the conversation is going to sound really weird. It's not going to flow. And if it feels clunky for them, it's not going to feel like a good relationship. So you've got to be really good at practicing these questions in front of a mirror so they flow off your tongue. But you have to be open in the dialogue to be able to allow the conversation to flow where it needs to flow. Remember, the discovery call is all about them. It's not about you. It's about learning about the company. It's about building a relationship. So I might say, what are some of the marketing goals that your company has for 2017? Notice I didn't even mention 2016. They've already spent the money. What are some of the marketing goals you've got for 2017 and forward from that? What are the audiences that you're trying to get in front of? And he might say something like, our audience is professional women. And then I would actually drill that down. I'd say, awesome. So professional women, is there an age group? Is it all professional women, or is it women in a certain profession? He might say, actually, it's professional women that are between the ages of 35 and 50 that work in corporations. So see how now he gave us a lot more information. Now, I might be looking at my event. What if my event had nothing to do with professional women in that age? It might not be a fit, but I still continue with the conversation to better understand the business, because something else might come out. So you don't want to hear disappointment like, oh, they only support women projects between 35 and 50, and that's not my project. You don't want to bring that energy to the call, and I see it all the time with entrepreneurs. They hear something that sounds like a disappointment, and then their energy changes, and it gets weird. Remember, the sponsor gets hundreds of calls from people like you every month, or in some cases, every week. How do you stand out? You stand out right now by how you communicate, what you're like to be with in the moment, how you talk to them, your curiosity about them. That makes you stand out from the next person that he or she is going to pick up the phone to have this very same conversation. It's not about you, it's about them. You might ask questions like, what kind of sponsorships have worked really well for you? And these 3 or 4 questions have probably taken up the whole 8 minutes. And then you might say, wow, it sounds like we've got so much more to talk about, Bob. I wonder if we could set another time to get together by phone next week and just pick up this conversation. I'm going to continue checking out more information on your website and the reports that you just mentioned. And he might say to you, you know what, Charmaine, I've got 15 minutes before my next meeting. Can we just continue now? And you say, awesome, that's great. And you continue the dialogue. Eventually, the sponsor is going to ask you, what about you? Why are you calling? And that's where you'll have a little sound bite, about 3 minutes, all prepared, that talks about your project, your tour, your event. But it's really super short, just a beautiful sound bite that he or she can understand what the event is about. Not too much information. If you give them too much information and you don't know enough about them, what you start saying could actually be the result of their checklist in their head saying, oh, that's not what we do. Oh, that's not of interest to us. So all of a sudden you start talking yourself out of a sponsorship because you're giving them too much information about yourself too early on. So this is about relationship building. The goal of the discovery call is to find out about them. What are their company values? What are the ways they like to work and support the community? What kind of sponsorships feel good to them? What would not feel good to them? I've asked them that. What are sponsorship disaster examples that you want to make sure that you avoid? What would not feel right for you as a sponsor? What does success look like in sponsorship? What feels like a win for you? What about the relationship? What kind of contact do you like to have with the people that you're sponsoring? What's your decision-making process? So you're asking them all these questions to really understand. They're expecting you to ask these questions. They're hoping that you ask these questions, because that what they don't want to see is you submitting some proposal that says, here's who I am, here's what I can do for you, here's how awesome my event is, or my book is, or my product is, and here's why you should sponsor me with gold, silver, or bronze. They don't want to see that. And they'll probably throw it in the garbage. Now, let me just pull this together. This is the first step of what we talked about at the eWomen Network Toronto event. So we've got to identify our dream sponsors and the people that we want to be in sponsorship with. And then we do the 3 key steps. We prepare, and I gave you a number of different lists that we need to start creating as part of the preparation. Number 2 is that we research our sponsors. We get into relationship with them on social media. We read their websites, we learn about them. And then number 3 is that we create a list of questions that we could ask on a discovery call. We practice them in front of a mirror. We have them typed up and written out in about a 16 or 18 font, because we want to make sure that we can read what we've written down. We prepare for that call. We prepare a voicemail script just in case they don't answer. And then we also prepare the questions, of course, so that when they do answer, or if we do have a meeting set up with them, a discovery call, we're prepared to be able to have that conversation with them. Now, that's the first step in the process. The next problem that entrepreneurs often have is, how do I actually really succeed at that discovery call and get to the point where they ask about me and my project? And that's going to be the topic of another webinar, which I will definitely let you know of. It's also going to be the topic of what I'm speaking on at the Global Influence Summit. I mentioned that event to you all. It's in sunny Florida in February. Isn't that a great time to escape the Ontario winters, cold, dreary winters? So February 8th, 9th, and 10th in Florida, just outside Fort Lauderdale, actually. It's going to be a fantastic event that's designed with entrepreneurs in mind. It's designed to help entrepreneurs to be able to up-level their business and put their impact into action. We've got an incredible lineup of speakers. I'll be speaking on sponsorship. Joseph Ranseth, who is one of our co-hosts, will be speaking about turning your message into a movement. He's a master. He'll also be sharing some strategies around doing a TED Talk. He has worked for a long time with TED Talks and has done an amazing TED Talk himself. Teresa DeGrobar, I mentioned Teresa around Mass Influence, the name of her book. She'll be talking about how to build influence. Then we also have Marbeth Dunn and Harrison Klein, Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver, which is a phenomenal book if you don't have that on your bookshelf already. I've read it 3 times now, at least. And then we also have Colin Sprague. Some of you have met Colin, and I know Daniela mentioned Colin at the eWomen Network. He is just amazing. I could listen to him all day long, and he'll be there. And so will Dr. Sean DuParent. So it's going to be a great event, February 8th, 9th, and 10th in sunny Florida. The website is globalinfluencesummit.com. You can go there and find out more information. And I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. And thanks for joining us today, folks. It's Charmaine Hammond. Have a great day.